We want them to want to behave. We want them to want to be more kind. We want them to want to contribute to the family. And that comes from a completely different place than being fixed by us. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to dive into chapter 1. We're going to dive right into parenting is not correcting. Now, part of you might be saying, of course, but for a lot of us raised in this behavioral mindset world, it's super easy to get lost in what do I do when my child doesn't go to bed or doesn't pick up their toys, or as they get older, doesn't want to do their homework, doesn't want to do chores. Or did I already say chores twice? Well, you get the point. Chores is a big deal. Or as they become a teenager, doesn't feel like they have to be kind. I guess that could go for toddlers too. So we get into this place where we get stuck in the what to do, what to not to do. And that's what we're talking about today, is this idea that we get so lost in what to do and what not to do that we don't go to the core of what's really creating this fruit of them not wanting to listen, of them not wanting to do the chores, of what's behind the tantrums and the upsets. So I go on in this chapter to say, focus on your child's heart instead of their obedience. This was something I had to say to myself a million times. Well, that might be an exaggeration, but 10, 20 times a day. And over the course of the last almost 26 years of being a parent, I've said it thousands and thousands of times to myself to remind myself, hey, focus on the heart, not the obedience. It doesn't matter as much if they do what I say. That's information. Behavior is information. So parenting with consequences and rewards is what we're diving in today. This is the very first chapter of the book. And I begin it by saying we've gotten confused when it comes to parenting. We think that if we can just fix the kids' behavior, our parenting problems will go away. But parenting is not about fixing your child's off-track behavior. Now, if at this moment you're full stop thinking, what? Yes, it is about them behaving. It is about getting them to do what I want them to do. I want you to just pause for a minute, hold on to that thought. You don't have to throw it in the trash bin yet. But what I do want you to do is let's get curious about it together. Because parenting is not about fixing your child's off-track behavior. It's about understanding it. Really, it is about understanding it. We want them to want to behave. We want them to want to be more kind. We want them to want to contribute to the family. And that comes from a completely different place than being fixed by us. Does that make sense? So it's about understanding the behavior, not by fixing it. And discipline is not the essence of parenting. Again, that's going back to the what to do, what not to do. Unconditional love is the essence of parenting. Parenting is not about telling your child what they can and can't do and then figuring out how to enforce those rules. It's about understanding them, your child, their behavior, what's going on with them, their big emotions, all of that, and then setting them up for success. So if you're following along in the book, we're on page 18, and I am giving you lots of bonus comments here. I'm not sticking exactly to the book, but that's where we're at. And we're starting with the next paragraph where I say parenting is about asking yourself, what do my children need to become the most incredible humans possible? And then figuring out how to create an environment where your children can thrive, and that can happen. See how this is completely different from, hey, I need to come up with the right chore system. I need to come up with the right consequences. I need to teach them a lesson. No, it's about creating an environment where our children can thrive and then helping them thrive. Parenting is about having dreamy relationships with your kids. Parenting is about learning how to create a relationship of mutual trust and acceptance so your children want to listen to you. And I will say that all the time, want, and I emphasize it. And in the book, I've italicized it because I want it to stand out. I want to stand out to you because it's very different than getting them to listen, because we can do that with the right consequence, with the right reward, with the right threat or bribe or ultimatum. We might be able to convince our kids to do something we want them to do, but it's very, very different to create a mutual relationship of trust and acceptance so that our children want to listen to us. So parenting is the art of staying compassionate and firm when the child decides not to listen to you. Now, how many times have you thought about that? What is my job, both when things are going well, setting them up for success, helping them thrive, preparing them to have a relationship, or creating rather a relationship where they want to listen to me. And then also, what is my job when they don't listen to me? What is my job when they don't listen to me? And I call it out right here. I think this is so, so important. Parenting is the art of staying compassionate and firm when the child or the children, that's what I say in the book, decide not to listen to you. Now, I was looking up some of my reviews. I don't do this very often because I just don't have time, quite honestly. But I realized that my book was listed on Goodreads, which means somebody has left a comment, read it, left some feedback or whatever on Goodreads. So I went and listened to it, or read it rather, read the review on Goodreads. And somebody said, I can't read this book or can't subscribe to what she's saying because she doesn't have any consequences. She doesn't have any limits. She doesn't have any rules. And you won't find me calling the effect or the thing that we have to do as a result of a child's behavior as a consequence. You won't hear me using that label very often because it's so entwined, meshed with a punitive flavor to it. So I really don't use it often at all, but I do love using the word limit and a connective limit. I use the word compassionate alpha so that we are both compassionate, but very much in charge and taking the lead. And here I say parenting is the art of staying compassionate. So seeing the child's point of view when they're making decisions that are well below their potential or what they're capable of, but also staying firm, which means my nervous system isn't activated. I'm not flying off the handle. I'm not making it mean that something's wrong with them or wrong with me. I'm just able to stay in a place where I'm compassionate, where I'm understanding, where I am not emotionally triggered and my nervous system isn't activated. That allows me to keep my prefrontal cortex on so I can be firm and give a limit, or set a limit is how I like to say it. I think that's even a better way to say it, in a firm yet loving, compassionate way, because sometimes we do need to have somebody set boundaries. It's actually really healthy for our kids to know that there are boundaries, that there are limits, that there's predictability in their life, that we will stay firm when we need to stay firm. Otherwise, our kids become entitled and they don't understand how to have self-restraint. And there's so many things that aren't healthy when we don't have limits, but yet if we go to the other extreme where we become authoritative, that's damaging as well. They've done longitudinal studies with authoritative and passive parents or parenting that has been done by parents, and they found negative results in both cases. So the middle way, where we're compassionate and firm, where we marry them together, where we keep our nervous system calm, not activated, is the way to go. 100%. That's what we're going to be talking about as I unpack the book in this very organic, raw, off the cuff kind of way, where I'm just reading my book and then I'm sharing my thoughts, I'm adding to it. It's going to be so fun. I love it already. So parenting is the art of staying compassionate and firm when the child decides not to listen to you. And that is so dang tricky sometimes, especially in the beginning, because we have so many meaning frames. We have so much cognitive dissonance around trying to show up differently. We have meaning frames around what this behavior means about them and us, and we have to unpack all of that. We have to calm our nervous system down. This is the work we do in both Pivot and CMP Mastery. And what I try to teach you how to do on your own here on the podcast, or if you work with me, hopefully this is something that you use as another resource to help you further implement what we're talking about inside either of those containers. So let me go on with the book. There are a lot of destructive myths about parenting. One of the most dangerous is that to be a good parent, you must teach your kids using consequences and rewards. This myth, it leads you to believe that if you dangle a reward or consequence in front of your child, then voila, they'll magically start listening to you. Your parenting problems are solved. If this were true, I wouldn't be writing this book. We wouldn't need to be having this podcast. We wouldn't be having this conversation because we would have figured out how humans tick. They just need a consequence or a reward, and then we get right into line. If this was true, you all, then we wouldn't have any problems with fitness or health or self-restraint. We wouldn't have any problems with using anything that's not healthy or beneficial for our body because we'd see the consequence of it and we'd say, oh my gosh, this is not helping me become my best version of myself. I'm going to stop. Thank you, natural consequence, for kicking in. That was very helpful. Now I'm not going to do that anymore. But that doesn't seem to be the way we tick. And I'm going to talk about that more. To a degree, it can be a wake-up call. And I do firmly believe that there is beauty and benefit in having a world that we live in that is bound by cause and effect. So yeah, if I speed and a cop catches me, I'm going to get a ticket. If I eat nothing but sugar, I might get sick. That is the truth, yet I might still do both of those things, even though the consequence is given to me. So why is that, right? Why is that happening? And that is the reality. Think about some of the things that you do in your life that you know you'd be better without. Maybe you have thought, oh, I really need to wake up earlier. I need to eat healthier. I need to go to the gym. I need to invest my money. I need to not spend so much of it on frivolous things. I need to heal this relationship with this person, or I want to get a better job and I want some more education. We are aware, we know what to do. Some of the time, I should say. A lot of the time we are aware at some level that there's something we're doing that's not working, and there's a negative consequence, a negative result happening in our life that we're not too fond of, but we're not willing to or able to consistently make a different choice. Why is that? That is the $1 million question. And what I'm going to be unpacking even more than I was able to in this book is I just riff on this because it's so important to know, why can I know better but not do better? Why can I have the knowledge but not be able to implement it? This is something I'm so passionate about, if you can't tell, because I started to know better about parenting, and it took me forever to get myself to do better. To stop yelling, to stop getting frustrated with my kids, to stop getting activated, to stop blaming them for my emotional state. Same with health. I've known better, but not always been able to do better. And that's really shifting in my life right now too. I've made some massive shifts that I've made similar ones before, but totally fell off the bandwagon. And I know why. I had some pretty crazy stuff happen in 2018. And it really rocked my world. And I, about 2 years ago, started realizing what the impact of that event had on me personally, and how it had changed how I was taking care of myself physically and emotionally. And actually, I feel like emotionally I really woke up, but physically I was not doing all of the things consistently that I wanted to be doing. And a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize how I wasn't taking full ownership for certain areas of my life. And part of it was because of this trauma that had happened. I had really taken ownership of parenting, really taken ownership of my mental well-being, but I hadn't had the capacity, I would say, to fully own my physical well-being in the way I wanted to. I was being lackadaisical about it. So that has really changed. And I do think, I will just say this before I get back into the book, that there are going to be It's going to be a process to roll out new ways of being. Let me back that up. We might understand what we need to do. Like, I know I need to stay calm when my kids are fighting. I know I need to have firm boundaries, but do it in a compassionate way. I know I need to understand this child's behavior. We have that awareness, and hopefully we can do it in a healthy way. We need to do it in a healthy way. We need to do it in an understanding, accepting, not judging or shaming ourselves way. And once we do that, then we can start in layers, start rolling out the being. And that is what has always been the case for me. At first, I would get really frustrated that I would know so much knowledge and have so much understanding, but still fall into old patterns. That doesn't trigger me as much anymore, hardly ever. But I know that might be triggering for you. And if it is, no, I'm here for you, because there is a reason why we can't just use a correction technique, use a consequence to get a result. It just doesn't work. So with parenting, if you are thinking, I just need to figure out what to do when my child does this thing. I need to know what to take away. I need to know what privileges should be withdrawn. I want to say there's more to it than that. And I don't want you to think that you wouldn't prevent your child from doing something or having access to something if it doesn't serve them. If your child isn't able to be responsible and make good decisions about electronics or about food, or when I say food, like maybe like preparing stuff in the kitchen, doesn't clean it up, they don't have the ability to be kind to a sibling or something like that, or manage themselves around homework. I'm not saying we don't set up limits and boundaries and guardrails for them, but we don't do it in a punitive way. We do it in a way of serving, a way of, oh, this is what they need. Like, I don't buy bags of potato chips and Swedish fish. And one of my favorite things are these chocolate covered cinnamon bears. So random, right? I discovered these a little while ago and I'm obsessed, but I don't bring gobs of them into my house because it's so much harder for me to be successful if I have them laying around. My favorite neighbor boy brings them over to me. I'm so grateful. And I'm also like, oh, it's going to be so hard. We have a little bit in my house right now. And I'm really trying to stay away. And the reason I don't buy them isn't a punishment towards myself. It's out of service for me. It's a guardrail. It's, hey, this is going to be the environment where I can thrive, is where I don't have all those things just at my beck and call. And there might be things like that with your kids where you realize they shouldn't have access to this, or be alone with this person, or have free reign of the kitchen, or even they're not ready to do their chores alone. And I'm going to create an environment where they can learn to have the restraint, or have the motivation, or have the ability to do whatever it is in a productive way. And yeah, it might mean we don't do other things before we do chores, but it's not because it's a punishment. So it's not correction. And I will say, because I haven't touched on this yet, is that correction in and of itself doesn't work because it feels terrible. I'm not saying we shouldn't give feedback. I'm not saying we shouldn't say to our kids, hey, I need to talk to you about this behavior. I'm not saying we might need to do that, is what I am saying. So I'm like riffing here. But we need to be really careful when we do that, because if we come across judgmental, if our nervous system is activated, if we think it's their fault we're feeling a certain way, it's not going to work. Their nervous system is going to pick up on what we're sending out, because what we're laying down, they're picking up, and they can feel the emotional resonance, the emotional signal that our mirror neurons are sending out. And when they feel that corrective tone in our voice, they're going to disconnect. They're not going to feel connected to us. They're not going to want to listen to us. It makes life so much harder. So parenting by correction doesn't work. So I hope I've unpacked that so that you're not like the Goodreads. Is it Goodreads? Yeah, Goodreads, I think. Reviewer that didn't understand what I was saying. And if you've listened / already read my book, or if you just were reading it together here and you want to go jump over to Goodreads and say, hey, that's not what she was saying. I would love that. I would love that, because I don't want to have people think this is just a passive, gentle, flimsy way of parenting. It's a very sturdy way of parenting. That being said, it's still not a corrective way of parenting, because parenting by correction doesn't work, not for the long term, and certainly not without a cost. The truth is that effective, healthy parenting is fueled by connection, compassion, empathy, and understanding. And I think I would add here firmness and confidence and sturdiness, just so someone's not confused to think it's all rainbows and daisies and we're just kumbaya by the fire and then magically the kids are going to want to do everything we say. That's not the truth, but the relationship is at the foundation because connection is our survival need at the base level. It's preeminent. It's our most base instinct. I was recently listening, again, stepping away from the book content. We've almost made it through a whole 2 pages, but I wanted to mention this as I am trying to help everyone just really grasp something that was so hard for me to grasp at first. And that is that attachment, connection, togetherness, relationship, whatever you want to call it, is the most important need. It is the base need. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is at the foundation. Dr. Neufeld I've heard him teach this in classes I've taken from him. He's rethinking the Maslow's hierarchy of need and saying it's not food and water, it's attachment, it's togetherness, it's relationship, it's that connectiveness. That's what we need more than anything else. In fact, if we don't have it, we'll lose our need, our desire for food. We'll just stop having the drive to survive. He said that at one point in his career, and I can't remember which part, but he was doing some experiments with rats. It was early in his career, I believe. And they're getting really excited about what they were doing. And then the rats died. And they were very confused. And then they realized this was happening in labs all over the place. And he said, now I see it clearly. I think they were separated. So they were losing their attachments and they just gave up the will to live. And that really hit me. It really landed for me because I think about what life would be like. Why would it be worth living if I didn't have people in my life, if I didn't have things that matter to me, relationships that I was connected to, causes that I was committed to? It would be very different. And you can see how this is such a foundational instinct we have. Moving on to the next subsection in chapter 1, it says, you've been had. It says, if corrective parenting doesn't work, how did modern parenting culture become obsessed with punishments and rewards? And I think that's a great question. That's what I asked myself in the beginning. Great question. If you've been thinking that, you're like, well, if it doesn't work, why are we so obsessed with it? Why are we drowning in it? Why are we swimming in it? Brief history lesson. Trust me, this is fascinating. After World War II, a theory, and there are some theorists I'm going to talk about. So let me start again. After World War II, a theory known as behavioralism or behavior modification, now also known as learning theory, it was popularized by the work of academics who called themselves behaviorists, foremost of whom were B.F. Skinner and John B. Watson. There were others too, but these were 2 of the leading, most popular ones. And both of these gentlemen, these scientists, had strong arguments in favor of behavioralism. So Skinner and Watson started by proving that they could use external stimuli to train pigeons and rats to do whatever they wanted them to do. They offered the animals positive consequences for specific behavior, i.e. rewards or bribes, and witnessed an increase in that behavior. And negative consequences diminished the behavior, i.e. punishments. So they're like, okay, we got to figure it out. Skinner published a statement, and he said this in one of his statements: behavior is shaped and maintained by mediated consequences. Meaning, let me just pause that for a minute because it's kind of a weird way to say it. But basically, he was saying that behavior is completely shaped by consequences, positive or negative, external consequences. He also said, give me a child and I'll shape him into anything. Wow, isn't that crazy? I'll shape him into anything. Like there's no inner springs. There's no 4,000 plus traits that that they're born with. They don't give any, they didn't have the science to see that at the time. So it makes sense. They didn't give it any room for that. It was just like blank slate. And that's actually what they called it, the blank slate theory, where we were born as a blank slate and it's all the environment. Watson said, the position is taken here that the behavior of man and the behavior of animals must be considered in the same plane. Meaning, y'all, bookmark this part, meaning there is no fundamental measurable distinction between human and animal behavior. No distinction between what I do and my dog does or my child does. And I love my dog. She is the best sheepadoodle. She's so sweet. She's so kind. She's so affectionate. I love her. But to say that her behavior and one of my children's behavior are taught the same way, that there's no difference, it just doesn't line up for me. It's just insane. So I disagree, because humans have this highly developed prefrontal cortex that makes us different from other mammals, especially different from pigeons and rats. We're similar to mammals in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong, but we have very sophisticated logic and reasoning capacities that are very different just on the biological level than pigeons and rats. So Watson and Skinner, they discounted this difference. They believed that no matter how complex the behavior was, it could be reduced to a simple stimulus response. The theory was proven on pigeons, and then it was applied to humans. And it worked, you all. They got us humans to believe that all we need to do is to do something or not do something, offer a consequence, offer a reward. That's how we shape behavior. However, the scientists of the time didn't consider the fact that we have this prefrontal cortex, right? And so they rolled it out and they taught it as if this was the way it was. First, what I want to say to this is that the cost of controlling someone using external stimuli is pretty darn high. Just think about how that feels to you. If you feel like someone is trying to get you to do something or trying to train you to do something using external stimuli, not taking into consideration what's going on for you, what your preferences are, how you're feeling. So they didn't consider that, or they didn't at least care, I guess, if they did consider it. And then second, I think what they didn't also consider was the long-term impact of humans' instinctive or intrinsic motivation. Meaning when we are told we have to do something, it might be something we really like to do, but the more we're told and tried to force to do it, the less we want to do it. That's why most kids by 3rd, 4th, 5th grade aren't as interested in reading as they are in kindergarten or 1st grade, because what used to be something they wanted to do became something they had to do. It's called counter will. I don't think we talk about it in the book, but it's a pretty cool term, pretty cool awareness that we have it, each of us. And just even having a word for it is super helpful. And then the third thing they didn't consider was the influence and impact attachments and relationships with other humans have on human behavior. Now, mammals in general are pretty much predisposed to be in herds with groups of people. They're relational. But I would say that for humans, this is such a big part of the equation that to throw it out and say, hey, it's not about that. We just got to take things away or give them things, and then they will become whoever we decide they become, is just ridiculous. However, this is what they rolled out, and a set of beliefs emerged about how to shape human behavior, and it became our unnoticed, unquestioned norm. Just as we don't question the sky is blue, Skinner's conclusion was not questioned after a while. And his conclusion was that all human behaviors are learned and unlearned as a result of positive or negative external consequences. So they collected the data, they ran the experiments, the reports were written, the theory was accepted by the masses, hook, line, and sinker. So the current parenting paradigm emerged with a scientific stamp of approval. And parenting by correction or could call it behavior modification, became good parenting. No questions asked. However, just because everyone's doing it doesn't make it a good idea. So for example, 80s hair, maybe I'm older than most of you listening to this, but 80s hair, you all, was something else. Big old bangs, lots of Aquanet hairspray. It was insane. It was crazy. I remember I was pretty little, but they had this line of clothing called units, which was all knit material that you'd put on yourself in different layers. Crazy. That has not ever come back. Neither has 80s hair, really. No fat diets. Seemed like a good idea at the time. But I'm currently primarily eating in a ketosis way, which is high fat. And I feel a million times better than I did. Okay, I'm using a lot of exaggeration today, but I'm feeling so much better than I was before. Losing weight, crazy. I'm eating almost all fat, 3-to-1 fat to protein ratio. I have more energy. This is going to date me. I have an almost 26-year-old. I guess you could do the math of how old I have to be around that age. You're probably right. I had some perimenopause symptoms. All of those have gone away. I ate the no-fat SnackWells in junior high, thinking no fat's so bad. We stopped eating butter. We would drink skim milk. And yeah, it was not the solution. So hindsight is 2020 with all things. I think we should be curious about everything. We shouldn't accept things just because it's popular. And I think this is one of those things that we need to start questioning with beautiful curiosity, not criticism, not harshness, but just compassionate curiosity. Like, is it actually working when I give my child a consequence in a punitive way? Or does it feel better when I set a connective limit, or when I just let them process their emotions and realize they don't even need a limit? They don't even need that. So this is a quote by Dr. Gordon Neufeld. He says, many people think that discipline is the essence of parenting, but that isn't parenting. Parenting is not telling your child what to do when he or she misbehaves. Parenting is providing the conditions in which a child can realize his or her full human potential. I love that quote so much. So much. It summarizes everything I'm trying to distill on the daily and then figure out how to implement with everyone in my group. Like, I had to stumble around in the dark trying to figure out, okay, this is a great idea, but how do I do it? How do I provide a condition where my child can realize his or her full human potential? Every day I'm asking myself, am I doing this for my kids? I'm tweaking, I'm trying to improve, and it's something I'm constantly trying to help everyone who's going through Pivot and CMP Mastery also question with curiosity and compassion and conviction, so that they can create this for themselves too. Like, we get really logistical. We talk about those specific examples and think, how do I actually create a condition where my child can realize his or her full human potential when they are throwing a big fit, when they are not being willing to pick up after themselves or whatever. And we go into the specifics because that is where the implementation starts to take off. So parenting by correction can potentially change your child's behavior in the short term. This is why it's so confusing, because we can get it to work, especially when they're young. Get them some stickers or candy, set up a timeout chair, take away their favorite toy, and you usually can get them to stop temporarily or start temporarily doing what you want them to do. But it comes at a huge cost. It fractures the relationship, it erodes the trust, it reduces the child's ability to tap into their intrinsic motivation. And it sends a message to our child that something is wrong with them. And they end up thinking something like, I'm too much, or mom can't handle me, or I'm not or I am lazy, or I'm not kind. And none of us want to convey that message to our kids. But when you believe the only way to train your child is through external positive or negative consequences, what other choice do you have if you want to be a responsible parent? You don't have any other choice. Now, here's the reality. Your child's behavior goes off track when he's frustrated about something. So when you give him a consequence to stop that off-track behavior, you're actually creating more frustration inside your child, not less. So he's less likely to listen to you, not more. He's less likely to learn how to behave better, not more. You're pouring gasoline on his inner fire of frustration, and it makes the problem bigger, not smaller. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're somewhere in chapter 1, and we're going to begin on what about rewards next time. I'm going to dive into some specific studies that back up these findings. It'll make it more concrete for you. It'll make it more believable. I can't wait to dive into that with you. But for now, we're going to leave it at this. Just take some time today thinking about what we've talked about here on the podcast, how that might be true, how consequences when done in a punitive way to try to teach a lesson often backfire in the long term. And if you can think of a time where you've been able to set a connective limit as a compassionate alpha leader in your home, and if you've done that, which if you were anything like me, you probably haven't until you started getting onto this stuff. But maybe you're listening to this and you're one of my people that I've been working with for a while. So if you've done that, also be thinking about those moments and contrast the two. And if you haven't ever set a limit from a connective, compassionate place, then I would just invite you to come back to the podcast. If you want help, come find out when we're doing another pivot. And I'll put the link in the show notes and you can learn more about that, because I would love to help you figure out how to take this from knowing to doing. All right, you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Go connect with your kids. Go learn a little bit more about yourself and your reactions and what you're making their behavior mean about you and them. And we will talk to you next time about rewards and what they have found through some studies that they've done through some universities happens when we give our kids, or just humans, because they're not all parent examples, but the tendency we have as humans is the same. So we're going to learn about what happens when we get rewards, and it might surprise you. All right. Have an awesome rest of your day. We'll talk to y'all soon. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.